So from the fallout from that leads us right into the St. Louis Invitational Tournament. First ever tournament. We're trying something a little different in league offices. This is kind of a all-star game, if you will. We had hoped to see the entire Resurgence lineup, since they were the champions, enter the tournament. Of course, Kennedy is still injured from Carrington's attack, so he will be unable to compete. And then Jake Durden has opted to rest some injuries and sit out of the tournament as well. That leaves Matt Fitchett, Davey Vega as two of our entrants into the STLI. Any standout matches to you, Tito, in the tournament?
I think the Matt Fitchett and the Linden match would be very interesting to see.
Lewis Linden, of course, kind of a wild card entry, has never appeared in PWCS, has a 0-0 record with us. We wanted to extend the invitation, it is an invitational, to somebody outside of the company and see where they might fall in our talent spectrum.
Yeah, and both Matt Fitchett and Linden have a very similar style of wrestling, high-flying kicks and stuff. And you have Matt Fitchett, who's the Granite City son. He's the favorite. He won last year the championship. He also has championship gold in KZ Metro Pro. So he has a lot of advantage. But at the same time, Linden could shine. This could be his moment that he could come in, win this tournament, be signed to a team. He can show his abilities right out of the gate.
Well, and the one I'm looking at is Davey Vega versus Connors. And you bring up great points about the similar styles and how those will clash and how we have one veteran and one at least rookie to us. When you're looking at Vega and when you're looking at Connors, Connors ended the year on an odd note as he finished in our 2015 Spectacular, but I think there's a lot behind him that is really going to propel him maybe into 2016. There's certainly a lot of momentum, and he will have no bigger test than perhaps one of our best on their own, Davey Vega. So Vega, of course, halfway through the season last year, I have to, own my words. I criticized him a little bit for his one-on-one competition in PWCS, but the way that he was able to respond in that championship spectacular won me back over again. And I think now that he is firmly in control of what he's doing, he's got to watch out for the upset because Vega's the de facto 2 seed in this whole scenario. So he and Fitchett, would be the favorites to carry themselves on. Connors, if he can pull up the upset, that will make him and put him in prime position heading into our first stage.
Connors, very interesting choice. Another guy kind of in a similar boat as Zach Sawyers. Not a great win-loss record in PWCS, but they're both making a lot of waves in the St. Louis wrestling scene. Connors, a little bit of a rule breaker. Seems he's turned over a new leaf since we saw him in Season 1. But Zach Sawyers, kind of the opposite story. Started with the Ego Busters, but has really endeared himself to the fans. And we've seen him come close against Fitchett. We've seen him come close against Gary J. at the Mega Ticket event. He's up against Mark Sterling, who's 2-0. And I think Tito wanted to touch on that a little bit.
I believe Sterling is probably my favorite in this tournament, hands down. 2-0, undefeated. And I think with the Greg Jovi having the first pick, I think it could be Sterling being first pick.
This being a one-night-only tournament could set the stage for that supplemental draft. Right. A lot of guys could move their stock up or down depending on how well they do in this tournament.
Right. Well, and I definitely don't see Dirty Jake Durden fitting in. As we can allude to here, his contract situation, he would be the prohibitive number 1 if the Ego Busters weren't the first overall pick. But with the Ego Busters there, will we also see some of these guys resort to the same kind of tactics that a Casey Carrington and a Greg Jovi would? And if you're looking for someone like that, Everett Connors may turn back to his old ways. I think it would create quite the dilemma if you see some of those guys like Zach Sawyers, who was in the Ego Busters before, turned around, had 2 spectacular performances at the last 2 stages of 2015, really showed off what his athleticism was like. He's a guy who could really rise his stock, so to speak. But I'm not picking any of them, though, for the tournament, might I add. But for the guys who don't have teams, you're right, this could be a big thing. The person you have to convince, though, is Greg Jovi. It's not going to be, a Kennedy. It's not going to be a Mikaze. It's not going to be any of those guys that they're having to worry about.
And I think in this tournament, you have 8 individuals. You have Fitchett, Vega, who are the crowd favorites, championship gold. They won the PWCS championship just at the last show. You have Castor, who is experienced, and you also have Sterling, who's undefeated. On the other side of that, you have the underdogs like Linden, and you have Connors, and you have Sawyers, and a little bit of Paco. I see a lot of potential in Paco, but I have to put him as the underdog because he is 1-1 in the PWCS standings.
We haven't seen a lot of Paco Gonzalez in the PWCS specifically, but again, another guy making a lot of waves. He's had a few matches with Ring of Honor Wrestling, so it'll be interesting to see. Of course, he goes up against a guy in Adam Castor who's been around the block a few times, and great shape, a lot of experience, and a mean streak. And now he's got Greg Jovi in his corner.
Adam Castor might really benefit from this trade over to have an actual manager kind of handling his business off the side now with Greg Jovi able to take that. And a veteran of his status is in high demand, so when he comes in here, I think a lot of that burden is off his shoulders. And Paco Gonzalez has the same kind of pedigree as a Danny Adams, if you look at that. When the two of them debuted together, that was a very classic match. They've been trained in similar styles before. So, I mean, Paco Gonzalez, if he comes out and earns at least 1 or 2 victories in this, I don't know if he's Greg Jovi material necessarily, but you can't overlook just how talented he is, and I think that creates an interesting dichotomy between him and Adam.
It is very interesting, though, like, at what point does Jovi overlook tendencies, and when does he pick a guy like Paco Gonzalez who could be successful, even though they might not share a similar moral compass?
Right, and I think you saw that his best team Jovi's had came in our first year in 2014, and that was a lot of mercenaries. I think last year he tried to take a lot of young guys and bring them up, and that didn't work. And so this year, his team now is built a mix, and I think he wants that mix of mercenaries, but he wants that chemistry. So Paco Gonzalez probably wouldn't fit in, but also don't be surprised at the power of cash and what Jovi would be able to get through a signing bonus, and how he can convince someone, hey, you're going to win this Memorial Cup, and you're going to win all the glory and all the prizes, and with that maybe comes an extra bonus and incentives to maybe change your tune a little bit.